Now, these guys you just mentioned, these are late 60s guys in Compton.
Right.
They're not really in gangs, but they're tough guys.
They're career criminals. Yeah, they're tough guys. No gangs.
Yeah, and what kind of stuff were they doing? Were they...
They were like, Len Poole was into selling marijuana and Sacanol pills, bennies, uppers. That was what he was into.
And was that a concern as a young cop if people were under the influence of these pills? Because would it give them?
The worst one was the bennies, because they get hopped up. That's what Phil Lee was into. Phil Lee was selling those bennies to those kids on Long Beach Boulevard. They'd be all hopped up, and they were driving a car. He'd be going 100 miles an hour because they were high.
And before we go into the 70s, you mentioned another place, the Epicure Room. That was Compton also?
Yeah, it was called the Epicure. It was right the other side of Victory Park. It was on Alondra. A guy by the name of Joe Ropo, he owned it. And the reason I know Joe Ropo owned it, an Italian guy, because I had a big crush on his daughter. Her name was Marianne Ropo, and she used to work at Skippy's hamburger stand. So I used to want to always get a hamburger, even when I wasn't hungry, just to look at her.
So these were some, I guess, white street guys that were on the east side of Compton. Joe Ropo, was he from East Compton? He
was from East Compton, yeah.
And so did East Compton have their fair share of white street thugs?
Well, you had Lyle Rozzini, okay? He was the other bar owner. He owned the Gun Kit, and he owned the Slick Chick. And him and Joe Ropo, and then you got to be able to Toselli, who owns the Golden Garter. These are all Italian guys. I'm not saying that these guys were mobsters. I'm just saying that they had a pretty good control of the bars, of some of the bars in Compton. Ropo, Vaselli, and Toselli.
Okay, so in the early 70s now, we're starting to hear about these new guys, these new groups. The Pirus are starting to make a name for themselves. As a police officer now, when do you start hearing about the Pirus?
I was working juvenile, and this kid, I got this one report that said that he was running from Centennial, he was being chased in Centennial, and he was being chased by the Pirus. That's the first time I heard of them. It was like 1969. And he was being chased, and they said, the guys who were chasing me were the Pirus.
And at that time, you didn't make the link between Sylvester Scott, who you had known as a kid, and the Pirus, right?
At that time, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't make that link yet.
Yet.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming shortly thereafter, you're getting information now, right?
Yeah, I went back to my neighborhood, and I started finding out that Sylvester Scott was a big honcho. He was a big man now. He was very, very, everybody looked at him like the Godfather. You got a problem? Take it to Puddin. P-U-D-D-I-N.
And did you ever cross paths with him as a police officer?
Did I what?
Cross paths with him.
Yeah. I stopped him a couple of times, but he never committed a crime in my area or when we were working that it would cause me to come after him. It wasn't that he was looking out, maybe he was looking out for me or not. But it's funny, my parents, lived on 130th, the second house from the corner from Central Avenue. The guy behind me, the Jackson family, Bozo Jackson, he got killed. He got shot 5 times, okay? The guy in front of me, Rex Pope, he got shot, he got killed, and his father got killed, got bludgeoned to death. They broke in his house and killed him, okay? The guy next door, Joe Jones, was in the penitentiary. My parents never once got anything done to them. They never got any kind of harassment, a broken house or a burglary or a stolen car or vandalism. Zero. Nothing. In fact, when my father died, all the neighborhood brought money and put money in the doorstep of my father's, and we couldn't understand that. And then what Mrs. Jackson, Mrs. Strahan said, she goes, well, when a white man dies, he leaves a will, but when a black man dies, he leaves bills. So we always put money up there for when that happens. That's what she told me. I swear to God.
And your parents never thought about moving?
Never thought about moving. Even though my father, we bought apartments in Lincoln Heights, he could have gotten into one of the apartment units there. This is when he was, early in his 80s. He said he loved it. He loved living in Compton, and he loved that house. He knew everybody, and he got a lot of respect. That was the way it was.
So as a patrol officer, this is right around the time where crime is starting to increase in Compton.
Right. When I joined in '68, it was in the upscale. Okay. By '70, it was skyrocketing. It was just going completely out of orbit.
And the gangs are also growing.
The gangs were now formulating and had developed a system by 1970. Now, the original Crip gang that people don't really realize was actually on Lantana Street off Central Avenue. And they were called the Neighborhood Block Crip, NBC. Later, they became the Nettie Block Crip. But the guy that ran that gang was a guy by the name of Singleton, okay? Lance Singleton. He was the leader, and the guys that worked with him was a guy by the name of Johnny Taylor and two brothers, Eugene and Eugene Robinson. They were the original Crip gang. I know that a lot of people remember Mac Thomas, but Mac Thomas came after Singleton, Lance Singleton. Actually, he was not the first one. It was Lance Singleton, as I remember it.
So were Lance Singleton and them already under the name of Lantana? Or were they just...
NBC.
Neighborhood Block.
Yeah, but that was really Lantana.
Okay. So they were known as Neighborhood Block, and then Mac Thomas, I believe, started Grandees.
Right, the Grandees.
So you're saying Neighborhood Block is older than Grandees?
Yes, definitely.
Because a lot of people say the Grandees were the first.
No.
Crips in Compton.
No, they're wrong. It was Lance Singleton, and it was NBC. That later became Nettie Block. So maybe they're thinking because it was Nettie Block,